The moment Zara Caldwell's cash hit the floor of First Capital Bank, something shifted in the air. $20,000 scattered at her feet, a deliberate humiliation orchestrated by Brielle, a teller who saw only a modestly dressed black woman, not the CEO commanding a billion-dollar empire. As laughter rippled through the bank lobby, Zara collected each bill with practiced composure, her face betraying nothing. She'd spent a lifetime being underestimated, turning others' prejudice into her secret advantage. The bank staff smirked, oblivious to who she truly was. They'd see her as insignificant today. By tomorrow, her silence would cost them everything. When the rich and powerful are disrespected, they don't always shout. Sometimes they simply rewrite the rules of the game. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The morning light caught the sleek black electric car as it glided into the parking lot of First Capital Bank. The engine hummed to a gentle stop, and Zara Caldwell sat for a moment, reviewing the day's schedule on her phone. She was dressed in a simple navy blazer over a cream blouse, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. No flashy jewelry, no designer logos, just quiet elegance that whispered rather than shouted. At 38, Zara had mastered the art of blending in when necessary. Today was one of those days. She needed to handle this errand personally, without the fanfare that typically surrounded her business dealings. Her phone buzzed with a message from Dev, her assistant. Final acquisition paperwork ready for signatures. Reynolds confirmed for 2 p.m. Zara typed back, on schedule, getting cash for the Harris family now. The Harris family, longtime custodial staff at Reynolds Logistics, had just lost their patriarch. The $20,000 would help with funeral arrangements and give the family breathing room while they grieved. A small gesture in the grand scheme of the $2 billion acquisition, but to Zara, these were the moments that mattered most. She tucked her phone into her simple leather handbag and stepped out of the car. The bank stood before her, a mid-sized branch with floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the morning sun. Nothing special, just another financial institution in a predominantly white corporate neighborhood where wealth typically came in expected packages. As Zara pushed through the glass doors, the cool air conditioning greeted her along with the familiar sounds of a weekday morning. Hushed conversations, the clicking of keyboards, the soft ding of the service counter. She took her place in line, waiting patiently as the people ahead of her completed their transactions. Behind the counter, Brielle Wilson laughed at something her co-worker had said. At 26, Brielle had worked at First Capital for just over 3 years. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, her makeup meticulous. She wore the bank's standard navy blazer with a pearl necklace that her parents had given her for graduation. "Next customer, please," Brielle called, her professional smile already in place. Zara approached the counter. "Good morning." "Good morning," Brielle replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as they swept over Zara's simple attire. Something shifted in Brielle's posture, a subtle straightening, a slight tilt of her chin. "How can I help you today?" "I'd like to make a withdrawal," Zara said, sliding her debit card across the counter. Brielle took the card, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "And how much will you be withdrawing today?" $20,000, please." Brielle's eyebrows lifted slightly. She glanced toward her co-worker, Carson, who was handling paperwork at the adjacent station. $20,000? In cash? "Yes, please," Zara confirmed, her voice steady and calm. Carson looked up from his work, catching Brielle's eye. A silent exchange passed between them, a mixture of skepticism and amusement. Brielle turned back to Zara, her tone shifting to one of exaggerated patience. "I'll need to see your ID, please." Zara reached into her bag and produced her driver's license, placing it beside her debit card. As Brielle examined it, Zara noticed the bank manager, Glenn Atwood, watching from his glass-walled office. His eyes lingered on her for a moment before returning to his computer screen. "And what will this be for?" Brielle asked, her tone suggesting the question was more than procedural. "Personal matters," Zara replied simply. Brielle's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'll need to process this through our system. We don't typically keep that much cash on hand at individual teller stations." "I understand," Zara said. While Brielle processed the request, Zara's phone buzzed again. She glanced down to see another message from Dev. Reynolds just called. Their legal team wants to discuss last-minute terms before signing. Should I tell them you'll be delayed? Zara typed back, "No delay, I'll be there." From across the counter, Brielle watched Zara's quick typing with barely concealed curiosity. "Someone important?" she asked with a forced casualness. "Family," Zara said, putting her phone away. The bank's system had verified Zara's account, which showed a balance that made Brielle blink twice. But instead of proceeding smoothly, she frowned. "Our security protocols require additional verification for withdrawals of this size. Could I see another form of ID?" Zara maintained her composure. "I've already provided my license, and I've completed biometric verification on your pad." "It's bank policy," Brielle insisted, her tone growing colder. Several customers had begun to watch the exchange. Zara reached into her bag again and produced her passport. "Will this suffice?" Brielle took it, examining it with exaggerated scrutiny. She glanced over at Carson again, who smirked slightly. "I suppose this will do," she said finally, sliding it back across the counter. She turned to count out the cash, making a show of double-checking each stack of bills. "20,000 is quite a sum," she said loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. "I hope you have somewhere safe to keep it." "I do, thank you," Zara replied, her voice betraying nothing. Glenn Atwood had emerged from his office now, casually positioning himself near the teller line, pretending to organize brochures, while keeping an eye on the transaction. He made no move to intervene, merely watching with a mixture of curiosity and assumption. Finally, Brielle finished counting the last stack of bills. She gathered them together, tapping them against the counter to align them. "Here you go," she said, sliding the stack toward Zara with a flick of her wrist. The movement was too forceful. The stack of bills hit the edge of the counter and cascaded over the side, fluttering to the floor at Zara's feet. A moment of silence fell over the bank lobby. "Oh my," Brielle said, her hand coming to her mouth in a gesture that didn't quite hide her smile. "How clumsy of me." From his station, Carson stifled a laugh. A young intern sorting paperwork nearby didn't bother hiding her amusement, letting out a soft giggle. Zara stood perfectly still for a moment, her eyes meeting Brielle's. Then, with deliberate calm, she knelt down and began gathering the scattered bills. The whispers started immediately. A man in line checked his watch impatiently. Another teller leaned over to whisper something to Carson, who snickered in response. As Zara picked up the last bill from the floor, she noticed a man in a sharp charcoal suit watching her from the waiting area. Unlike the others, his expression was troubled, his lips pressed into a grim line. Their eyes met briefly before he looked away, his discomfort evident. Zara stood, the recovered bills neatly stacked in her hand. She placed them carefully in her bag, then looked directly at Brielle. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet but clear. Brielle's smile faltered slightly at Zara's composure. "You're welcome. Have a nice day." As Zara turned to leave, she heard the muffled laughter behind her. She walked with measured steps across the lobby, her back straight, her head high. She pushed through the glass doors into the bright morning sun, aware that several pairs of eyes followed her exit. What she didn't see was the man in the charcoal suit watching her intently, his brow furrowed in thought. After a moment's hesitation, he followed her out of the bank. Zara reached her car, unlocked it, and slid into the driver's seat. Only then, in the privacy of the tinted windows, did she allow herself a deep breath. She placed her hands on the steering wheel, steadying herself. Her phone buzzed again. "Dev. Everything okay?" She looked at the message, then at the bank through her windshield. She watched as the man in the charcoal suit emerged from the building, scanning the parking lot. His eyes found her car, and for a moment, he seemed to consider approaching. Zara started the engine. Whatever he wanted, it would have to wait. She had a $2 billion acquisition to finalize, a grieving family to help, and a legacy to build. She wouldn't allow this moment to derail any of it. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she glanced in her rearview mirror to see the man watching her. "Go," his phone now pressed to his ear. "I'm fine," she texted back to Dev. See you in 20 minutes. She accelerated onto the main road, leaving the bank and its small-minded assumptions behind. The sleek black electric car pulled into the underground parking garage of Caldwell Tower, a 40-story glass and steel monument to innovation in the heart of the city's financial district. As Zara stepped out, a security guard named Diane approached with a warm smile. "Good morning, Ms. Caldwell," Diane said, her voice filled with genuine respect. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "It is, Diane," Zara replied, returning the smile. "How's your son doing in his new position?" Diane beamed. "He loves it. That internship program you started changed his life. Our whole family's grateful." "He earned it," Zara said, heading toward the private elevator. "Tell him I expect great things." The elevator doors opened directly into the executive floor, where the wall-to-wall windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. The reception area featured a glass wall etched with Caldwell Innovations in understated silver lettering. Beneath it, in smaller text, Zara Caldwell, CEO. Dev Thompson was waiting, tablet in hand, his expression a mixture of relief and concern. At 32, Dev had been with Zara for nearly 6 years, rising from junior analyst to becoming her most trusted advisor. "You're cutting it close," he said, falling into step beside her as they walked toward her office. "The Reynolds team is already setting up in the main conference room." "I made a stop," Zara replied, handing him her bag. "There's $20,000 in cash. Have Melissa deliver it to the Harris family with my condolences. Make sure it's discreet. I don't want them to feel it's charity." Dev nodded, making a note on his tablet. "The final acquisition paperwork is on your desk. Legal says everything's in order, but they want you to review Section 7B, something about transition timelines." Zara entered her office, a spacious room with minimalist furnishings. One wall was dedicated to family photos and meaningful mementos: her mother's law degree, her father's first patent, her own graduation cap from Wharton. She set her phone on the desk and took a deep breath, letting the familiar surroundings wash away the residual tension from the bank incident. "The Reynolds board is nervous," Dev continued. "Their stock dropped 2 points overnight. They're worried we might leverage that to renegotiate terms." "We won't," Zara said, scanning the documents on her desk. "The terms are fair. This partnership is about long-term vision, not short-term gains." Dev hesitated. "There's something else." Peter Langdon requested a private meeting before the signing. He specifically asked that it be off the books. Zara looked up, her interest piqued. Peter Langdon was one of Reynolds Logistics' most influential board members, conservative, traditional, and notoriously difficult to impress. Did he say why? No, but he seemed unsettled. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Both turned to see a tall man with silver temples standing in the doorway, the same man in the charcoal suit from the bank. "Ms. Caldwell," he said, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying discomfort. "I hope I'm not intruding." Zara maintained her professional composure, though inwardly she was connecting the dots. "Mr. Langdon, I wasn't expecting you until the signing meeting." "I apologize for the surprise visit," Peter said, stepping into the office. "But after what I witnessed this morning, I felt compelled to speak with you privately." Dev glanced between them, picking up on the tension. "Should I give you the room?" "That would be helpful, thank you," Peter replied before Zara could answer. Zara gave Dev a slight nod, and he exited, closing the door behind him. Peter remained standing, his discomfort evident in his rigid posture. "Ms. Caldwell, I was at First Capital Bank this morning. I saw what happened." Zara gestured to the chairs across from her desk. "Please, sit down, Mr. Langdon." He took a seat, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "I want to apologize, not just for the teller's behavior, which was inexcusable, but for my own inaction. I should have said something." Zara studied him carefully. "Why didn't you?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He shifted in his seat. I don't have a good answer for that. Shock, perhaps. Or the ingrained habit of not wanting to make a scene." Now you know what silence does, Zara said simply. The words hung in the air between them. Peter's expression changed as the full weight of her statement registered. Yes, he said finally. I suppose I do. Zara leaned back in her chair. Mr. Langdon, may I ask why you followed me from the bank? When I realized who you were, he began. When did you realize? She interrupted. Peter looked uncomfortable again. Only after you left. I overheard the manager, Atwood, tell one of the tellers they'd just disrespected Zara Caldwell of Caldwell Innovations. The teller laughed it off, but Atwood seemed concerned. Zara nodded slowly. And you followed me because? Because I'm ashamed, Peter admitted. Both of what happened and of my failure to intervene. And because I feared it might affect our partnership. Separate personal slights from business decisions, Mr. Langdon. As do I, typically, he replied. But this wasn't a slight. It was a public humiliation, and it was clearly influenced by... He hesitated. You can say it, Zara said. Race, gender, perception. Peter nodded. Yes. They were interrupted by Zara's phone buzzing with a text message. She glanced at it. Security footage saved. What should I do? Rosa. Zara set the phone face down. Mr. Langdon, I appreciate your concern and your apology, but what happens next isn't about you or me or even that bank teller. It's about patterns and consequences. What do you intend to do? He asked. My job, Zara replied. Today that means finalizing a $2 billion acquisition that will benefit both our companies. And about the bank incident? Zara's expression remained neutral. I haven't decided. Back at First Capital Bank, the morning rush had subsided. Glenn Atwood had called Brielle into his office, closing the door behind her. Do you have any idea who that was? He asked, his voice low but intense. Brielle rolled her eyes. Some woman, trying to act important. What's the big deal? That was Zara Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Innovations, net worth over $300 million. Brielle's expression faltered. What? No way, she didn't look like... Like what? Glenn cut her off. A CEO? A millionaire? Brielle shifted uncomfortably. I just meant, she was so plain. No fancy clothes or anything. Glenn ran a hand through his thinning hair. Delete the security footage from this morning. All of it. If she files a complaint, I don't want any record. She won't complain, Brielle said dismissively. It was just some cash that fell. Accidents. Happen? It wasn't an accident, and we both know it, Glenn snapped. Just do as I say. Outside the office, Rosa Martinez, a newer teller with 3 years of experience, had overheard everything. As soon as she had a break, she slipped into the security office and copied the footage to a secure drive. The discrimination she'd witnessed bothered her deeply, and something told her this footage shouldn't disappear. Later that afternoon, Zara stood alone in her private office bathroom, staring at her reflection. She thought of her mother, Althea Caldwell, who had passed away 5 years ago. A civil rights lawyer turned community advocate, Althea had taught Zara what real power looked like. Let them laugh, Althea used to say. Let them underestimate you. Let them show who they truly are, until they learn better. Zara touched the small pendant around her neck, her mother's favorite piece of jewelry, a simple gold disc engraved with the words, Dignity always. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Zara, Dev called. The Reynolds team is ready. She opened the door to find Dev waiting, his expression concerned. Are you okay? After whatever happened with Langdon, I'm fine, she assured him. But I need your help with something else. A teller from First Capital Bank, Rosa Martinez, reached out to me. She has footage of an incident that occurred there this morning. Dev's eyes widened slightly. What kind of incident? The kind that shows who people really are when they think no one important is watching, Zara replied. I need you to meet with her, verify the footage, and then we need to decide whether to go public or stay silent. What's your instinct? Dev asked. Zara considered for a moment. The Reynolds acquisition would make headlines on its own. If word gets out about the bank incident simultaneously, it could overshadow everything we've worked for. But, Dev prompted, knowing her well enough to sense the unspoken thought. But sometimes silence protects the wrong people, Zara finished. Dev nodded. There's something else you should know. I did some digging on First Capital. 3 of Reynolds' board members, including the chairman, sit on the bank's Regional Advisory Committee. This new information shifted Zara's perspective. The connections ran deeper than she'd realized, making her next moves even more consequential. Set up the meeting with Rosa, she decided, and I want a complete breakdown of all financial relationships between Reynolds Logistics and First Capital. Bank before the signing. On it, Dev replied. Across town, Peter Langdon sat in a private meeting room with Thomas Wells, the chairman of Reynolds Logistics. The older man listened impassively as Peter recounted what he'd witnessed at the bank. So she was embarrassed, Thomas said when Peter finished. It's unfortunate, but hardly our concern. It's more than embarrassment, Thomas, Peter insisted. It was a clear display of prejudice, and it happened at a bank where we have significant influence. Thomas waved a dismissive hand. We don't get involved in private embarrassments, Peter. We're finalizing a $2 billion deal today. Keep your focus where it belongs. And if she walks away? She won't, Thomas said confidently. This deal benefits her more than us. Besides, she's a businesswoman. She won't let personal feelings interfere with profit. Peter wasn't so sure. There had been something in Zara Caldwell's eyes, not anger, but calculation. The calm assessment of someone who understood her own power and was deciding how to use it. As Peter left the meeting, his phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Langdon, my name is Rosa Martinez. I'm a teller at First Capital Bank. What happened to Zara Caldwell today was wrong. I have proof, and I want to help. Please call me if you're willing to stand up for what's right. Peter stared at the message, feeling the weight of a decision. That suddenly seemed much larger than a single business deal or banking incident. With a deep breath, he saved the number and continued walking, the choice hanging over him like a gathering storm. Meanwhile, Zara sat at her desk, reviewing the final acquisition documents. Her phone buzzed with another message from Rosa. Meeting set with your assistant tomorrow. I have everything you need. Zara's finger hovered over the reply button. After a moment's thought, she typed, "Thank you for your courage." Outside her office, the preparations for the signing ceremony continued. The future of both companies hung in the balance, along with a truth that was about to be revealed one way or another. The morning after the bank incident, Zara arrived at her office earlier than usual. The $2 billion acquisition had been signed the previous evening, with Peter Langdon watching her closely throughout the ceremony. The deal would be publicly announced in 3 days. After all the regulatory paperwork was filed, and the boards of both companies had been fully briefed. As she settled at her desk, a soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Dev entered, followed by a young Latina woman whose nervous energy was apparent in the way she clutched her purse. "Miss Caldwell," Dev said. "This is Rosa Martinez." Zara stood, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Martinez. Please have a seat." Rosa sat on the edge of the chair, her posture stiff. "I could lose my job for being here," she said quietly. "I understand the risk you're taking," Zara replied, "and I appreciate it." Rosa reached into her purse and removed a small flash drive. "It's all here. The security footage shows everything. Mr. Atwood told Brielle to delete it, but I made a copy first." She placed the drive on Zara's desk. "What she did to you wasn't right." Dev picked up the drive and inserted it into Zara's computer. The 3 of them watched in silence as the scene unfolded on the screen. Zara at the counter, Brielle's condescending demeanor, the moment when the cash tumbled to the floor, the barely concealed laughter from the staff. "There's more," Rosa said, leaning forward to navigate to another file. "This is from 10 minutes after you left." The footage showed Glenn Atwood in his office with Brielle, gesturing emphatically while she rolled her eyes. Though there was no audio, the body language told the story clearly enough. "He knew who you were," Rosa explained. "He was telling her she disrespected Zara Caldwell of Caldwell Innovations. But she didn't care. She just laughed it off. Zara's expression remained neutral as she studied the footage. "Ms. Martinez, may I ask why you're doing this?" Rosa hesitated, then straightened her shoulders. "My mother cleaned office buildings for 30 years. She taught me that respect costs nothing but means everything. What I saw yesterday..." She shook her head. "It wasn't just disrespectful. It was cruel." Zara nodded slowly, making a decision. "Ms. Martinez, how long have you worked at First Capital?" 3 years. I started as a part-time teller while finishing my finance degree." "And now?" "Still a teller," Rosa said with a hint of resignation. "I've applied for the analyst program twice, but Mr. Atwood always says I'm not quite ready." Zara exchanged a glance with Dev, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "What if I offered you a position here?" Zara asked. "Entry-level analyst, with room for growth based on your performance." Rosa's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "I value integrity, Ms. Martinez, and courage. You've demonstrated both." Tears welled in Rosa's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll start next Monday," Zara replied with a small smile. "Dev will help you with the paperwork and transition details." After Rosa left with Dev to complete her employment forms, Zara sat alone reviewing the footage once more. The humiliation hadn't been spontaneous, it had been deliberate, designed to put her in her place. Now she needed to decide what to do with this evidence. Her phone rang. Peter Langdon. She hesitated before answering. "Ms. Caldwell," his voice came through, sounding strained. "I need to speak with you about the bank situation." "What about it, Mr. Langdon?" "A teller reached out to me, Rosa Martinez. She says she has footage." Zara wasn't surprised. Rosa's determination clearly extended in multiple directions. "She does. Have you decided what you'll do with it?" "Not yet," Zara admitted. "Why do you ask?" There was a pause before Peter answered. "Because I've just left a Reynolds board meeting. Thomas Wells, our chairman, dismissed the incident entirely, called it a private embarrassment not worth our attention." "And you disagree?" "I do," Peter said firmly, "but I'm outnumbered. The board won't take a public stand." Zara considered this information. "Thank you for telling me, Mr. Langdon." "I want to help," he offered. "Whatever you decide." After hanging up, Zara pulled up the file Dev had compiled on First Capital Bank's connections to Reynolds Logistics. The relationship ran deeper than she'd initially realized. Beyond the 3 board members, Reynolds had over $120 million in business accounts at the bank, and their corporate credit structure was managed through First Capital's commercial division. Meanwhile, at First Capital Bank, Brielle Wilson was having the best morning of her career. Glenn Atwood had called her into his office to deliver unexpected news. "The regional VP was impressed with your quarterly numbers," he told her, though both knew this wasn't entirely true. The real reason was Atwood's attempt to curry favor with upper management by promoting one of their favorites. "We're offering you the senior teller position, effective immediately." Brielle beamed. "That's fantastic. Does it come with the office next to yours?" "It does," Glenn confirmed, along with a 15% raise. Later that afternoon, Brielle sat in her new office feeling vindicated. She'd worked hard for this promotion, or at least she believed she had. During her lunch break, she recorded a quick TikTok video in the empty break room. "Day in the life of a newly promoted senior teller," she narrated, flipping her hair and showing off her new nameplate. "Pro tip: efficiency is key. Don't let bougie nobodies waste your time with their drama." The video would gain traction quickly, eventually reaching over 50,000 views, including one view from Zara Caldwell's phone that evening. Zara watched the TikTok with a calm detachment, noting how Brielle's confidence bordered on arrogance. She showed the video to Dev, who had stayed late to finalize Rosa's employment contract. "She has no idea what's coming, does she?" Dev asked. "Few people do," Zara replied. "That's the nature of consequences. They arrive when you've convinced yourself they never will." Dev nodded toward the computer. "So what's our plan? Go public with the footage?" Zara considered for a moment. Not yet. First, I want to move our corporate accounts, all of them. Dev raised an eyebrow. That's over $80 million. Exactly, Zara said. I want it done quietly, but thoroughly, and I want it completed on the same day the Reynolds acquisition is announced. That's going to cause waves, Dev warned. It's meant to, Zara replied. Sometimes the most powerful statement is a silent one. Over the next 2 days, Dev and Zara's financial team worked discreetly to prepare the transfer of all Caldwell Innovations, accounts from First Capital Bank. Nothing would happen until Zara gave the word, but when she did, the withdrawal would be immediate and complete. Peter Langdon, meanwhile, couldn't shake his discomfort with the situation. He called an informal meeting with 3 other Reynolds board members he thought might be sympathetic. We need to take a stand, he argued. If this footage goes public, our association with First Capital will damage our reputation. Thomas would never approve, said board member William Turner. He and Glenn Atwood go back 30 years. Then we approach him together, Peter insisted. Make him understand the potential fallout. The meeting with Thomas Wells went exactly as Peter had feared. The chairman remained unmoved. You're overreacting, Peter, Thomas said dismissively. Banks have difficult customers every day. It's hardly our concern how they handle them. Zara Caldwell wasn't a difficult customer, Peter countered. She was subjected to deliberate humiliation because of how she looked. Thomas waved a hand impatiently. The deal is signed. She got what she wanted. This will all blow over. Peter left the meeting frustrated but determined. That evening, he called. Zara, they won't budge, he told her. Not unless something forces their hand. Something will, Zara assured him, though she offered no details. The morning of the announcement arrived. The business world buzzed with rumors about the Caldwell-Reynolds deal. Financial analysts predicted a market surge for both companies, once the acquisition was confirmed. At Caldwell Tower, Zara dressed with particular care, a tailored charcoal suit that conveyed power without ostentation. Around her neck, her mother's pendant. Dignity always. Dev met her in the lobby. Everything's ready. The press release goes out at 10 a.m. Our financial team is standing by for your signal on the account transfers. And the other matter? Zara asked. Rosa starts officially on Monday, but she's given notice at the bank. She's using her remaining vacation days so she won't be there when it happens. Zara nodded. Good. She's taken enough risk. At First Capital Bank, the morning proceeded like any other. Brielle arrived early, settling into her new office with a sense of satisfaction. She'd changed her LinkedIn profile to reflect her promotion and had already received dozens of congratulatory messages. Glenn Atwood was reviewing the day's appointments when his assistant interrupted with an urgent message. A legal team was in the lobby, requesting to speak with him immediately. Confused, Glenn hurried to the front of the bank. There he found 3 impeccably dressed attorneys accompanied by Zara Caldwell herself. Ms. Caldwell, he said, his voice betraying his surprise. What can I do for you? I'm here to close my accounts, Zara replied calmly. Glenn forced a smile. Perhaps we could discuss this in my office. I'm sure whatever concerns you have. This isn't a negotiation, Mr. Atwood, Zara interrupted. My legal team is here to ensure the process goes smoothly. By now, several customers had paused their transactions to watch. From her office, Brielle spotted Zara and emerged, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition. Is there a problem? She asked, approaching the group. Zara turned to face her. No problem at all. I'm simply withdrawing my business. Glenn's smile became strained. Ms. Caldwell, if this is about your last visit, it's about respect, Mr. Atwood, Zara said, her voice quiet but clear. Or rather, the lack of it. One of the attorneys stepped forward, presenting Glenn with a folder. These are the account closure forms, already completed. We require only your signature to process the withdrawals. Glenn opened the folder, his face paling as he saw the account balances. These are all of Caldwell Innovations accounts? All of them, Zara confirmed. Brielle, looking over Glenn's shoulder, gasped audibly. The total exceeded $80 million. Outside the bank, a small crowd had gathered. Among them were two photographers, not paparazzi, but professionals from major financial news outlets, alerted by an anonymous tip that something noteworthy might occur at First Capital that morning. Glenn, aware of the growing spectacle, tried. One last time. "Ms. Caldwell, please, let's discuss this privately. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement." "The time for discussion was 3 days ago," Zara replied. "Now it's time for consequences." As the paperwork was processed and the massive withdrawal initiated, Zara's phone buzzed with a notification. The Caldwell-Reynolds acquisition had been officially announced. Within minutes, both companies' stocks began to rise. At the same time, a ripple of unease spread through First Capital's regional offices as word of the massive account closure reached them. Zara waited patiently as the final documents were signed. When everything was complete, she turned to leave, but paused beside Brielle, who stood frozen in shock. "Respect costs nothing," Zara said quietly. "But the lack of it? It just cost you $2 billion. She walked out of the bank with her legal team, past the photographers who captured the moment for posterity. The images would appear in financial publications later that day, accompanied by speculation about why Caldwell Innovations had suddenly severed ties with First Capital Bank. By afternoon, First Capital stock had begun to slide. Investors, sensing trouble but unaware of the specifics, began selling off shares as a precaution. Peter Langdon watched it all unfold from his office. When the news of Zara's account closures reached him, he made his decision. He drafted a formal letter of resignation from the Reynolds board, citing ethical differences with leadership. Before submitting it, he made one call to a senior editor at the Wall Street Journal, a woman he'd known for years. "Vanessa," he said when she answered, "I have a story you'll want to hear." By the following morning, what had begun as a private incident had transformed into a public spectacle. Rosa's video footage, anonymously uploaded to social media, spread like wildfire across platforms. The hashtag, "Respect Costs Nothing," began trending nationally. Financial news outlets, initially focused on the Caldwell-Reynolds acquisition, now scrambled to cover the bank story. The juxtaposition was powerful. Zara Caldwell, the CEO who had just orchestrated a $2 billion deal, had been humiliated at a local bank for trying to withdraw her own money. At Caldwell Tower, Zara maintained her usual schedule, attending meetings and conference calls as if nothing unusual was happening. But in the background, her communications team monitored the growing media storm. "The story's everywhere," Dev reported, showing her the headlines on his tablet. "Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, they're all running it." Zara nodded, scanning the coverage. "And First Capital's response?" "Nothing official yet," Dev said, "but their stock dropped 12% at opening. Investors are panicking." At First Capital Bank, panic had indeed set in. Glenn Atwood had been summoned to an emergency meeting with regional executives. Brielle, meanwhile, was frantically trying to distance herself from the incident. She deleted her TikTok video, but it was too late. Users had already recorded and reposted it. Her smug comments about bougie nobodies now played in stark contrast to the footage of her shoving Zara's cash off the counter. In desperation, Brielle began deleting emails and messages related to the incident. She was in the middle of purging her computer when her office door opened. Glenn stood there, his face ashen. "They want to see all communications about the incident," he said tightly. "Regional is sending an investigative team." Brielle's eyes widened. "I was just organizing my files." "They're not idiots, Brielle," Glenn snapped. "Deleting evidence makes this worse." "Evidence of what?" she protested. "It was an accident. The money slipped." Glenn stared at her in disbelief. "The video shows exactly what happened. You did it deliberately, and now the whole world can see it." As they argued, the bank's marketing team drafted a hasty statement, attempting to control the damage. First Capital Bank holds itself to the highest standards of customer service. We are aware of the video circulating online and take these matters seriously. We are conducting a thorough internal review and will take appropriate action. We regret any inconvenience to our valued customers. The statement, posted to the bank's social media accounts, only fueled the outrage. Comments flooded in, criticizing the generic response and demanding accountability. By mid-afternoon, a small protest had formed outside the bank's main branch. Mostly, young activists carrying signs with phrases like, "Respect costs nothing," and "Banking while black shouldn't be different." Financial news cameras captured the scene, broadcasting it alongside expert analyses of First Capital's plummeting stock value. The connection between the viral video and the market reaction was impossible to ignore. In her downtown apartment, Rosa watched the coverage with a mixture of satisfaction and anxiety. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing with messages from former colleagues at the bank, some supportive, others accusatory. A knock at her door startled her. When she opened it, she found a courier with a package from Caldwell Innovations. Inside was a note from Zara. "Your desk is ready. Monday can't come soon enough." Beneath the note was a new laptop and employee badge. Rosa held them, tears welling in her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt her career had real direction. Peter Langdon's resignation from the Reynolds board hit the news cycle that evening. Rather than a quiet departure, he had chosen to make a statement, granting an exclusive interview to the Wall Street Journal's Vanessa Harper. "I witnessed the incident personally," he told her, his words now in print for millions to see. "And when I brought my concerns to the board, they were dismissed. Sometimes silence is complicity. I couldn't remain silent any longer." The article detailed Peter's account of what happened at the bank, his failed attempts to convince the Reynolds board to take a stand, and his decision to resign on principle. Thomas Wells, the Reynolds chairman, was livid. He called Peter directly after the article was published. "You've made a serious mistake," Thomas warned. "This board doesn't tolerate disloyalty." "No," Peter replied calmly. "The mistake was watching. Discrimination happened and doing nothing about it. I can live with my decision, Thomas. Can you?" At Caldwell Tower, Zara called an emergency board meeting to address the situation. Unlike the Reynolds board, her team was unified in their support. "The market response has been overwhelmingly positive," reported Naomi Franklin, Caldwell's CFO. "Our stock is up 17% since the acquisition announcement. The bank incident, rather than overshadowing the deal, has actually amplified public interest in our company." "And the legal implications?" Zara asked. Mark Whitman, her chief counsel, shook his head. "None that concern us. You withdrew your money legally. You haven't made any public accusations of discrimination. Everything you've done is above board." "Some media outlets are suggesting we should sue," board member Elise Thornton noted. Zara shook her head. "We don't need to drag them. We're already miles ahead." After the meeting, Zara asked Dev to stay behind. She noticed he seemed distracted, occasionally wincing when he shifted in his chair. "Are you all right?" she asked. Dev hesitated before answering. "Just some back pain, nothing serious." Zara studied him carefully. "How long has this been going on?" "A few weeks," he admitted. "The doctor says it's just stress." She didn't press further, but made a mental note to follow up. Dev had been her right hand through every major business challenge. His well-being mattered beyond his professional value. At First Capital, the internal investigation had begun. Employees were called one by one into meetings with HR representatives and legal counsel. Most claimed they couldn't remember the incident clearly or insisted they weren't directly involved. When Rosa's absence was noted, a search of her employee records revealed something alarming to the investigative team. 3 formal complaints she had filed over the past year, documenting instances of racial insensitivity by staff members, including Brielle Wilson. "Why weren't these addressed?" demanded Jennifer Hayes, the regional HR director who had been called in to manage the crisis. Glenn Atwood shifted uncomfortably. "They seemed minor at the time." Jennifer's expression hardened. 3 documented complaints from a single employee is never minor, Glenn. It establishes a pattern. As the investigation continued, more details emerged. Rosa wasn't the only employee who had raised concerns about Brielle's behavior. 2 other tellers and a loan officer had reported similar experiences, all of them people of color. By evening, First Capital's damage control strategy shifted. Regional executives decided that sacrifices would be necessary to salvage the bank's reputation. Glenn Atwood was summoned to a video conference with the bank's president and several board members. The message was clear. His position as branch manager was now untenable. "We need to demonstrate decisive action," the president explained. "The public needs to see that we take this seriously," Glenn protested. "I've given 15 years to this bank. You can't just throw me under the bus for one incident." "This isn't about one incident," replied a board member coldly. "This is about a culture you allowed to develop under your leadership." Afterward, Glenn drove to Brielle's apartment, hoping to discuss a unified strategy. He found her in tears, surrounded by social media printouts and hate mail. "They're destroying my life." "Over nothing," she sobbed. "People are calling me a racist. They're sending me death threats." Glenn felt a flicker of sympathy, but it was overshadowed by self-preservation. "HR wants to meet with you tomorrow. They're offering a separation package. Resignation, with 2 months severance in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement." Brielle looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. "They're firing me after promoting me 3 days ago?" "It's the best offer you'll get," Glenn said tiredly. "I'm being forced to resign too." "That's not fair," Brielle protested. "I'm not signing anything. I'll tell everyone how the bank is throwing us under the bus to save themselves." Glenn sighed. "Do what you want. But remember, the video speaks for itself. No one's framing you for something you didn't do." He left her apartment feeling decades older than when he'd arrived. His career, built over 15 years of dedicated service, had collapsed in less than 48 hours. The next morning, Brielle rejected the separation offer. Instead, she recorded a video statement from her car, posting it directly to her social media accounts. "I want to address the video that's been circulating," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "What happened was an accident. I never intended to disrespect anyone. I'm not racist. I have friends of all backgrounds. The bank is trying to make me the scapegoat instead of acknowledging their own toxic culture." The video was a disaster. Comments flooded in, pointing out her defensive tone and the classic "I have friends of all backgrounds" line that had become a parody of inauthentic apologies. By afternoon, First Capital announced that both Glenn Atwood and Brielle Wilson were no longer with the bank. The statement pledged a comprehensive review of policies and mandatory sensitivity training for all staff. The damage, however, was already done. First Capital's stock continued to slide as major corporate clients began quietly moving their accounts to competitors. At Caldwell Tower, Zara had a surprise visitor. Mr. Harris, the father of the custodial staff family she had helped with the $20,000 cash withdrawal, had come to thank her personally. "My father would have been proud to see his funeral arranged with such dignity," Mr. Harris said, his voice thick with emotion. "And knowing what you went through to get that money for us." "It was nothing," Zara assured him. "No, ma'am," Mr. Harris insisted. "It wasn't nothing. It was everything. You showed my family respect when you didn't have to give us a second thought." After he left, Zara stood at her office window, looking out over the city. Her phone buzzed with a text from Peter Langdon. "I'm meeting with Vanessa Harper again. Tomorrow. The story's growing. Are you ready for what comes next?" Zara thought about her mother, who had fought discrimination with quiet determination rather than loud proclamations. She thought about Rosa, who had risked her livelihood to stand for what was right. She thought about Mr. Harris and his family, who understood the true meaning of dignity. "Yes," she texted back. "I'm ready." That evening, Zara gave her only public statement on the matter. A brief, measured response to a reporter's question as she left her office. "You don't rise by humiliating others," she said simply, "but you can fall that way." The quote spread across social media within hours, becoming a rallying cry for those who saw in Zara's experience a reflection of their own encounters with discrimination. By nightfall, respect costs nothing and you don't rise by humiliating. Were trending nationally. The story had transcended business news to become a cultural moment, a reckoning not just for one bank or one teller, but for the subtle biases that shaped countless daily interactions. And through it all, Zara Caldwell maintained her composure, her dignity, and her focus on the future. She had not raised her voice once, but her power had been heard everywhere. 1 week after the incident at First Capital Bank, the story showed no signs of fading from public consciousness. If anything, each new development seemed to fuel greater interest and outrage. Early Monday morning, Zara arrived at Caldwell Tower to find Dev waiting with a troubled expression. "A new document leaked overnight," he said, handing her his tablet. "Someone inside First Capital released an internal memo from 3 years ago." Zara scanned the document, her expression remaining neutral despite its contents. The memo, written by a senior risk executive at First Capital, had flagged her personal and business accounts as high risk. Despite their substantial balances and perfect banking history, the justification cited unusual deposit patterns and non-traditional business activities, thinly veiled code for racial profiling. "How bad is the reaction?" she asked. "It's everywhere," Dev replied. "National news picked it up an hour ago. Social media is exploding." Zara handed the tablet back. "Have our communications team prepare a statement acknowledging the leak, but emphasizing that we're focused on moving forward with the Reynolds integration." "That's it?" Dev seemed surprised by her measured response. "That's it," Zara confirmed. "The document speaks for itself. We don't need to amplify it further." Later that morning, Zara welcomed Rosa Martinez for her first day at Caldwell Innovations. The young woman entered Zara's office with a mixture of nervousness and determination. "Welcome to the team," Zara said warmly. "Are you ready for your first day?" "More than ready," Rosa replied. "Though I have to admit, it's a little intimidating." Zara smiled. "Everyone feels that way at first. Just remember why you're here. You saw something wrong and had the courage to speak up. That same courage will serve you well in this role." As Rosa settled into her new position across town, the Reynolds Logistics Board was meeting in emergency session. The leaked memo had intensified scrutiny of all companies associated with First Capital Bank, including Reynolds. "Our stock is down 3% since the opening bell," Thomas Wells reported grimly. "The market is reacting to our connection with First Capital. We need to sever ties immediately," urged board member William Turner. "Issue a statement condemning their practices." "That would be an overreaction," Thomas replied. "First Capital has been our banking partner for over 20 years. "Times change," said another board member, Janet Brooks. "Peter Langdon was right. We should have taken a stand days ago." The debate continued for nearly 2 hours before a compromise was reached. Reynolds would issue a statement expressing concern over the allegations, while announcing a review of all banking relationships. Meanwhile, Zara was meeting with the complete board of the newly merged entity. The $2 billion partnership had created one of the largest logistics and innovation conglomerates in the country, but integration challenges remained. "Some of Reynolds' board members are nervous," reported Naomi Franklin, Caldwell's CFO. "They're worried the bank scandal might overshadow the merger benefits." "It's a valid concern," Zara acknowledged, "which is why I've requested this meeting with the journalist Vanessa Harper, not to discuss the bank incident, but to refocus attention on what this partnership means for the future of both companies." Peter Langdon, now working as a strategic advisor to the merged board, nodded his approval. "Vanessa is respected in the industry. An exclusive with her would shift the narrative." After the meeting, Peter approached Zara privately. "There's something else you should know. Vanessa wants to do a broader piece, not just about the merger, but about how Black women in leadership navigate silence." Zara considered this. "That's not what I had in mind." "I know," Peter said. "But it might be important. Not just for you, but for others in similar positions." Zara thought for a moment before replying. "Set up the meeting, but make it clear. This isn't about playing the victim. It's about transforming obstacles into advantages." That afternoon, as Zara prepared for a conference call, Dev appeared in her doorway. He seemed hesitant, almost embarrassed. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. "Of course," Zara replied, noticing how he winced slightly as he sat down. Dev took a deep breath. "I haven't been entirely honest about my health situation. The back pain I mentioned, it's related to a chronic condition I was diagnosed with last year. Multiple sclerosis." Zara's expression softened. "Dev, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't want it to affect how you see me professionally," he admitted. "This acquisition has been all-consuming, and I didn't want to be a distraction." "Your health is never a distraction," Zara said firmly. "What do you need? Time off? Different responsibilities?" "My doctor recommends a treatment that would require me to be away for about 6 weeks, Dev explained. "I've been putting it off, but now that the acquisition is complete—" "Say no more," Zara interrupted. "Take whatever time you need. Your position will be waiting when you return." Relief washed over Dev's face. "Thank you. After everything that's happened lately, I wasn't sure." "Dev," Zara said gently, "in all these years, have I ever given you reason to doubt my loyalty to those who stand by me?" He smiled. "No, never." "Then don't start now." The next day, Zara met with Vanessa Harper at a quiet restaurant away from the financial district. The journalist was sharp, professional, and didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Let's be clear about something," Vanessa began. "This story has evolved beyond a single incident at a bank. It's touching on issues many people experience but rarely see validated so publicly." Zara nodded. "I understand that, but I didn't seek this spotlight." "No," Vanessa agreed, "but you have it now. The question is, how will you use it?" Their conversation shifted to Zara's early career, the challenges she had faced not just as a black woman, but as one who refused to conform to expectations. "I was often the only black person in the room, let alone the only black woman," Zara recalled. "In meetings, my comments would be ignored, then repeated by someone else minutes later to enthusiastic reception." "How did you handle that?" Vanessa asked. "I learned to use it," Zara replied. "While they were busy ignoring me, I was watching, listening, gathering information they didn't realize they were giving away. I turned invisibility into an advantage." Vanessa scribbled notes. "And did you ever confront them directly?" "Occasionally," Zara said. "But I found that proving them wrong was far more effective than telling them they were wrong." As their interview continued, across town, Rosa's story was gaining traction. A local news outlet had learned of her role in exposing the bank incident and requested an interview. Initially hesitant, Rosa eventually agreed after Zara assured her it was her choice to make. "I was scared," Rosa admitted to the reporter. "I have a 5-year-old son, Mateo, no savings. I couldn't afford to lose my job, but I also couldn't stay silent when I saw someone being humiliated just because of how they looked." The story, published that evening, portrayed Rosa as a courageous single mother who risked everything to stand against discrimination. Public response was immediate and overwhelmingly positive, with many praising her as the unsung hero of the situation. Meanwhile, Brielle Wilson was facing the harsh consequences of her actions. After rejecting the bank's separation offer and posting her defensive video, she had become the face of entitlement and casual racism in dozens of news segments and thousands of social media posts. Desperate to rehabilitate her image, she contacted a public relations firm specializing in crisis management. Their assessment was blunt. She needed to offer a genuine apology and then disappear from public view for at least 6 months. Instead, Brielle decided to double down. She appeared on a conservative podcast, portraying herself as the victim of cancel culture and political correctness gone mad. "It was just money falling on the floor," she insisted during the interview. "Now I'm being portrayed as some kind of monster. I've been doxxed, threatened. I can't even leave my apartment." The backlash was swift and merciless. Even listeners who might have been sympathetic were put off by her refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing. The podcast host, sensing disaster, quickly steered the conversation to other topics. That evening, Brielle received an unexpected call from her mother, Eleanor Wilson, a once renowned civil rights attorney who had become estranged from her daughter years earlier due to their diverging values. "I saw the interview, Brielle," Eleanor said, her voice heavy with disappointment. "And the video from the bank. Mom, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Eleanor interrupted. "I spent 30 years fighting against exactly the kind of behavior you displayed, the casual cruelty, the smug entitlement, the absolute certainty that someone deserved less respect because of how they looked." "That's not fair," Brielle protested. "You're taking her side without even hearing mine." "There are no sides here, Brielle. Only right and wrong. And what you did was wrong." Eleanor's voice softened slightly. "The question is, what are you going to do about it now?" The conversation ended without resolution, but it planted a seed in Brielle's mind, one that would take time to grow. At First Capital Bank, the fallout continued. An independent audit, hastily commissioned by the regional office, uncovered troubling patterns in how the bank handled accounts belonging to minorities. The findings suggested systemic issues far beyond a single incident with one teller. Customers continued to close their accounts in protest. Several corporate clients had quietly moved their business elsewhere. The bank's stock had fallen nearly 20% in just over a week. The board of directors held an emergency conference call to discuss options. The consensus was clear. Dramatic action was needed to save the bank's reputation and halt the financial bleeding. The next morning, First Capital announced the resignation of its CEO, along with 3 board members. The press release promised sweeping changes to ensure every customer receives the respect and service they deserve, regardless of background. As the bank struggled to contain the damage, Zara focused on building something positive from the situation. She announced a $2 million donation to launch the Althea Caldwell Institute, named after her mother, dedicated to supporting underrepresented women in finance and business leadership. "My mother taught me that true power isn't about making others feel small," Zara explained at the launch event. "It's about elevating those who haven't had the same opportunities." The Institute would offer scholarships, mentorship programs, and professional development resources. Among its first initiatives was a fellowship program for working mothers pursuing MBA degrees, with Rosa Martinez announced as one of the inaugural recipients. "This fellowship includes full tuition coverage, plus childcare support," Zara explained, to a stunned Rosa. "You can continue working here while completing your degree." Tears welled in Rosa's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll make the most of it," Zara replied with a smile. "That's all the thanks I need." News of the Institute spread quickly, drawing praise from business leaders and social activists alike. Donations poured in from companies eager to associate themselves with the initiative and with Zara Caldwell's growing influence. Meanwhile, federal regulators had quietly launched an investigation into First Capital's practices, focusing on potential discrimination in their account monitoring systems and hiring practices. Though not yet public, rumors of the investigation further damaged the bank's standing in financial circles. As the week drew to a close, Zara received a handwritten letter from Peter Langdon. "Zara, what I witnessed at the bank that day changed me, but not as much as watching how you responded to it. You showed me that true leadership isn't about speaking the loudest, but about acting with purpose and integrity even when, especially when, others fail to do so. You've changed how I lead, how I listen, and how I teach my son. For that, I cannot thank you enough." With respect and gratitude, Zara folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. The message reminded her that sometimes the greatest impact comes not from grand gestures, but from staying true to one's principles when tested. That evening, as most employees had gone home, Zara made an unexpected visit to the First Capital headquarters. Not to the branch where the incident had occurred, but to the corporate offices where interim leadership was struggling to chart a path forward. She had requested the meeting privately, with no press or attorneys present. Just a conversation between business leaders. The interim CEO, Patricia Anderson, greeted her with obvious apprehension. "Ms. Caldwell, I appreciate you coming, though I must admit, I'm surprised you wanted this meeting." Sometimes it's important to look each other in the eye, Zara replied. Especially after a storm. For the next hour, they discussed not the past incident, but the future. How the bank might genuinely reform its culture, what meaningful change would look like, and the long road to rebuilding trust. As Zara prepared to leave, Patricia asked the question that had been hanging in the air. Do you think First Capital can recover from this? Zara considered her response carefully. I think you need to serve quietly for a while. Let your actions speak louder than your press releases. Real change isn't announced. It's demonstrated day after day, in ways that might never make headlines. The conversation, though private, marked a turning point. The bank would survive, but it would never be the same. And perhaps that was exactly what needed to happen. 3 weeks after the incident at First Capital Bank, Zara stood backstage at the National Business Leadership Summit, reviewing her notes for the panel discussion she was about to join. The topic, integrity and corporate culture, had been scheduled months ago, but now carried unexpected weight given recent events. The moderator, James Wilson, approached with a warm smile. We're thrilled to have you, Ms. Caldwell. Given everything that's happened, your perspective is more valuable than ever. Zara nodded politely, already sensing where this might go. I'm happy to contribute, but I hope we'll focus on forward-looking solutions rather than rehashing recent events. Of course, James assured her, though his expression suggested otherwise, though naturally, people are curious about your experience. When the panel began, James wasted no time steering the conversation toward the bank incident, framing his first question around the concept of forgiveness in business relationships. Ms. Caldwell, many have praised your restraint throughout this situation, he began. You haven't pursued legal action or made inflammatory statements. Is forgiveness an important value in your leadership philosophy? The audience leaned forward, eager for her response. Zara took a measured breath before speaking. I think we're focusing on the wrong concept, she said calmly. This was never about revenge or forgiveness. It was about showing people who we allow to lead in our institutions, our communities, and our conversations. She continued, when we tolerate small acts of disrespect, we normalize larger ones. When we reward arrogance and condescension, we shouldn't be surprised when they become cultural values. The question isn't whether I forgive what happened, but whether we collectively decide that's the standard we accept. Her response shifted the entire tenor of the panel. Rather than dwelling on the specific incident, the discussion evolved into a thoughtful exploration of how corporate cultures are built through daily choices and silent permissions. Across town, a different kind of reckoning was taking place. Eleanor Wilson, Brielle's estranged mother, had called a press conference on the steps of the county courthouse where she had once argued landmark civil rights cases. I speak today not as an attorney, but as a mother, she began, her voice steady despite the emotional weight of her words. My daughter, Brielle Wilson, was the bank teller in the video that many of you have seen. Her actions that day were indefensible and reflect a failure not just of professional conduct, but of basic human decency, reporters murmured in surprise. No one had expected this public statement from a family member. I spent my career fighting for dignity and equal treatment for all people, Eleanor continued. To see my own daughter become a symbol of the very discrimination I fought against has been deeply painful. I want to apologize personally to Ms. Zara Caldwell and to anyone who has ever experienced similar treatment. The cameras captured every word as Eleanor concluded. I failed to instill in my daughter the values I hold dear. That is my burden to bear. But it is not too late for her, or for any of us, to learn, to grow, and to do better. The press conference made national news, adding yet another dimension to a story that continued to resonate with the public. For many, Eleanor's willingness to hold her own daughter accountable represented the kind of moral clarity that had been missing from the bank's initial responses. Brielle, watching her mother's statement on television, felt a complex mixture of anger, shame, and, buried beneath layers of defensiveness, the first genuine stirrings of remorse. Meanwhile, at Caldwell Tower, Zara was meeting with her executive team, to finalize details of the Althea Caldwell Institute's launch. What had begun as a $2 million personal donation had grown substantially, with corporate partners and individual philanthropists pledging additional support. "We're now looking at a $12 million initial endowment," reported Naomi Franklin clearly, pleased. "That will allow us to expand the fellowship program from 20 to 50 recipients in the first year." "And the mentorship network?" Zara asked. "Over 300 business leaders have volunteered to participate," Dev answered. Though still awaiting his medical treatment, he had insisted on remaining involved in the Institute's development. "We've created a matching algorithm to pair mentors with fellows based on career goals and personal backgrounds." Zara nodded approvingly. "And the physical space?" "We've secured the entire 10th floor of the Peterson building," Dev said. "The renovations will be complete by next month. It has everything we discussed: classrooms, meeting spaces, a childcare center, and private offices for fellows who need a quiet place to work." As the meeting concluded, Zara's assistant appeared with an unexpected message. The Harris family, whom she had helped with the $20,000 funeral expenses, had requested to see her. Zara welcomed them immediately. Mr. Harris entered with his wife and 2 daughters, all dressed formally as if attending an important occasion. "We won't take much of your time, Ms. Caldwell," Mr. Harris said. "We just wanted to thank you personally for what you did for our family." "It was nothing," Zara assured them. "No, ma'am," Mr. Harris insisted. "It wasn't nothing. It was everything. You showed my family respect when you didn't have to give us a second thought." Mrs. Harris stepped forward, holding a small wooden box. "We wanted you to have this. It belonged to my father-in-law." Zara accepted the box and opened it carefully. Inside was a vintage pocket watch, well worn but meticulously maintained. "He always said time was the most precious gift," Mrs. Harris explained. "We thought he'd want you to have it, especially after we learned what you went through to get that money to us." Deeply moved, Zara thanked the family for their thoughtfulness. After they left, she placed the pocket watch on her desk beside the photo of her mother. 2 reminders of what truly mattered beyond balance sheets and business deals. That afternoon, Rosa received a surprise visitor at her new workspace. Her 5-year-old son, Mateo, accompanied by his regular babysitter. The child's school had closed early due to a water main break, and with no other options, the sitter had brought him to his mother's workplace. Rosa looked up in alarm. "Nancy, I'm so sorry. I didn't know the school closed." "It's absolutely fine," came Zara's voice from behind them. She had been passing by when the child arrived. "We have a conference room with a television. Mateo can watch educational programs while you finish your work." "I don't want to impose," Rosa began. "It's not an imposition," Zara assured her. "In fact, this is exactly why we're including childcare facilities in the Institute. Life happens. We adapt." Mateo looked up at Zara with wide eyes. "Are you my mom's boss?" Zara smiled and knelt to the child's level. "I'm her colleague. We work together to make things better." Later that week, the business world buzzed with news of a major development. First Capital Bank was being acquired by Liberty Union, a Black-owned regional credit union with a sterling reputation for community investment and ethical practices. Acquisition, announced at a joint press conference, would retain most of First Capital's frontline employees while completely replacing senior leadership. Liberty Union's CEO, Marcus Johnson, made it clear that the bank's culture would undergo a fundamental transformation. "This isn't just a financial transaction," he stated firmly. "It's a reclamation. We're taking a troubled institution and reshaping it to serve all communities with dignity and respect." Though never explicitly stated, the irony was lost on no one. A bank that had humiliated a Black woman CEO was now being taken over by a Black-owned financial institution. The narrative had come full circle in a way that felt both just and poetic. As news of the acquisition spread, Zara received another unexpected visitor, William Turner, one of the Reynolds board members who had initially sided with Peter Langdon in calling for action. "I wanted to apologize in person," William said when they were seated in her office. "I should have pushed harder when Peter first raised concerns. Instead, I backed down when Thomas resisted. What changed your mind? Zara asked. William hesitated before answering. My daughter. She's 26, just starting her career in finance. When she saw that video, she asked me a simple question. Dad, if that had been me, would you have stayed silent? I didn't have an answer that I could be proud of. Zara nodded, understanding the power of that personal connection. It's never too late to find your voice, Mr. Turner. As William left, Zara checked her calendar for the rest of the day. Her final appointment was one she had been looking forward to. A private dinner with a group of black women CEOs, all leaders, in their respective industries. The dinner, held in a secluded room at an upscale restaurant, quickly evolved from a formal networking event into a candid, sometimes emotional conversation about shared experiences and hard-won wisdom. What you did, Zara, withdrawing your business without making a scene, that was power, said Denise Harper, CEO of a major healthcare system. You showed them consequences without giving them the satisfaction of seeing you lose your composure. We've always had to be twice as good, added Lauren Thompson, founder of a successful tech startup. You showed them we already were. As the evening progressed, the conversation shifted from the specific incident to broader strategies for navigating leadership as black women in predominantly white industries. There was laughter, mutual support, and the relief that comes from being truly understood. When Zara finally returned home that night, she felt a sense of completion that had eluded her since the day at the bank. The incident had been painful, but its ripple effects had created opportunities for growth and connection that might never have existed otherwise. She stood at her penthouse window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Brielle was confronting her actions and their consequences. First Capital was transitioning to new ownership. Rosa was pursuing her MBA dreams. Dev was preparing for treatment that would improve his quality of life. And the $2 billion acquisition, the deal that had brought her to that bank in the first place, was already proving more successful than analysts had predicted. The merged company's stock had risen steadily, unaffected by the controversy that might have overshadowed it. In her mind, Zara heard her mother's voice, a memory from childhood that had guided her through every challenge. Don't raise your voice. Raise your power. She had done exactly that, without shouting, without threats, without public accusations. She had simply demonstrated her power through action, and in doing so, she had changed not just her own circumstances, but the lives of many others. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new battles to fight. But tonight, in this quiet moment of reflection, Zara Caldwell allowed herself to acknowledge a simple truth. Sometimes victory comes not from what you say, but from who you are and how you choose to respond when the world shows you its true face. She turned from the window and switched off the lights, ready to rest and prepare for whatever the next day might bring. 6 months after the incident at First Capital Bank, what had begun as a personal humiliation had evolved into a movement with far-reaching consequences. The business world was still feeling the aftershocks, with companies across the country quietly revising their internal conduct policies and customer service training protocols. The Caldwell incident had become shorthand in corporate boardrooms for the dangers of allowing toxic behaviors to go unchecked. Sensitivity training seminars now routinely included case studies based on what had happened, though Zara herself had declined numerous requests to participate in such programs. On a crisp autumn morning, Zara sat at her desk reviewing quarterly reports when her assistant knocked at the door. Sorry to interrupt, but you received a letter that seems personal, she said, handing Zara a small envelope with childish handwriting on the front. Zara opened it carefully. Inside was a drawing of a woman in a business suit standing tall, surrounded by colorful stars. Beneath it, in careful printing, Dear Ms. Caldwell, my name is Ava Williams. I am 11 years old. I want to be like you. I want to win without yelling. My mom showed me your story. Thank you for being brave. Sincerely, Ava. The letter included the name of Ava's school, a public middle school in an underserved area of the city. Zara studied the drawing for a long moment, then made a decision. Clear my schedule for Thursday afternoon, she told her assistant. And order 24 journals, high quality but nothing too flashy. I'd like them embossed with a simple message. Your voice matters. Use it wisely. 2 days later, Zara walked into West Side Middle School with no entourage, no press, no fanfare. The principal, who had been informed of her visit but sworn to secrecy, greeted her with barely contained excitement. The students have no idea you're coming, she whispered. Ava will be thrilled. When Zara entered the classroom, there was a moment of stunned silence before recognition dawned on the students' faces. Ava, a small girl with bright eyes and tidy braids, clapped a hand over her mouth in shock. Zara spoke briefly to the class about the importance of finding their voices and using them with intention. She didn't mention the bank incident directly, instead focusing on how quiet determination often accomplished more than loud demands. Afterward, she presented Ava with a personalized journal, inscribed with an additional message. To Ava, your letter reminded me why every challenge matters. Keep writing your story. The visit lasted less than an hour, but its impact on Ava would prove lifelong. Unbeknownst to Zara, that simple act of recognition would set the girl on a path toward becoming a formidable advocate for educational equity in underserved communities. Meanwhile, Brielle Wilson was struggling to rebuild her life from the ashes of her former career. Blacklisted from the banking industry and notorious in her community, she had been forced to move to a neighboring state and take a retail job under a shortened version of her name. Her name tag read simply, B. The transition had been humbling. Gone were the tailored blazers and pearl necklace, replaced by a standard uniform and comfortable shoes for long hours on her feet. The pay was less than half what she'd earned at the bank, and the work offered none of the status she had once prized. One afternoon, as Brielle stocked shelves in the household goods section, she looked up to find her mother, Eleanor, standing at the end of the aisle. How did you find me? Brielle asked, her voice a mixture of surprise and wariness. It wasn't difficult, Eleanor replied. May we talk? My hotel is across the street. Later, over coffee in Eleanor's hotel room, the two women began the difficult process of reconciliation. I'm not here to lecture you, Eleanor assured her daughter. I've done enough of that publicly. Brielle winced at the reminder of her mother's press conference. Then why are you here? Because you're still my daughter, Eleanor said simply. And because I believe in redemption. They talked for hours, about Brielle's childhood, about the values Eleanor had tried to instill, about the moment when their paths had diverged. For the first time, Brielle spoke honestly about the incident at the bank. I wanted to feel powerful, she admitted. I saw someone I thought was beneath me, and I wanted her to know it. Eleanor nodded. Understanding why you did it is the first step. What will you do next? Brielle had no immediate answer, but the question would linger in her mind long after her mother departed. Across town, Rosa Martinez was thriving in her dual roles as analyst at Caldwell Innovations and MBA candidate through the Althea Caldwell Institute. Her son, Mateo, now 6, had enrolled in a prestigious private school with a scholarship provided through the Institute's family support program. For a recent school assignment, Mateo had written a simple essay titled, My Mom is a Hero, detailing how Rosa had stood up for what was right despite the risks. His teacher, moved by the story, had submitted it to a children's magazine, where it was published alongside a photo of Rosa and Mateo. I never expected to be called a hero, Rosa told Zara when the magazine appeared. I was just doing what felt right. That's precisely what makes someone a hero, Zara replied. Doing what's right when it would be easier not to. 6 months into its existence, the Althea Caldwell Institute had already established itself as a force for positive change. A documentary crew from a major streaming service had begun following several of the inaugural fellows, capturing their journeys from career challenges to new opportunities. Behind the scenes, Zara ensured that the Institute remained focused on practical support rather than symbolic gestures. Each program was designed with measurable outcomes in mind, from job placement rates to salary growth to leadership advancement. We're not here to make people feel good about helping, she told the board during a progress review. We're here to actually help. The Institute's success had drawn attention from unexpected quarters. One morning, Zara's assistant informed her that her ex-husband, Michael, had called requesting a meeting. He says it's about supporting the institute, the assistant explained. But given the timing, Zara understood the implication. Michael had left their marriage 8 years earlier, when her company was struggling and his legal career was ascendant. Now that she was regularly featured in national media, his sudden interest seemed suspect at best. When Michael arrived at her office the following day, his expensive suit and practiced charm could not disguise the opportunism in his eyes. "You've done amazing things, Zara," he began, settling into a chair without waiting to be invited. "I've been following your success with pride." "Have you?" Zara asked coolly. "Of course," he insisted. "We may not have worked out as a couple, but I've always believed in your potential." The conversation continued in this vein, with Michael gradually working his way toward his true purpose. He wanted to establish a legal clinic under the Institute's umbrella, with himself as the director. "Think about it," he urged. "The Michael and Zara Caldwell Legal Aid Initiative. It would be a powerful addition to your work." Zara studied him for a moment, then laughed once, a short, decisive sound that seemed to startle Michael. "No, thank you," she said simply, rising from her chair to signal the meeting's end. "The Institute's initiatives are determined by need, not by networking opportunities." As security escorted Michael from the building, Zara felt a quiet satisfaction in closing that chapter of her past for good. She had once measured her worth partly through his approval. Now she recognized it for the limitation it had always been. That evening, as Zara left her office, Dev called with unexpected news. A mural had appeared overnight on a building in the financial district. A striking portrait of Zara, rendered in bold colors against a backdrop of rising stock charts and broken chains. The artist signed it Justice, Dev reported. "It's already drawing crowds." When Zara drove past the mural on her way home, she was struck by its simple caption, "Strength in Silence." The artist, a local woman known for her socially conscious work, had captured something essential about Zara's approach, not just to the bank incident, but to leadership itself. The quiet dignity, the calculated restraint, the power that required no volume to be felt. Meanwhile, the transformation of First Capital Bank into a branch of Liberty Union Credit Union was nearing completion. The acquisition, which had initially seemed like a business maneuver, had evolved into something more meaningful, a reclamation of space, both physical and cultural. Marcus Johnson, Liberty Union's CEO, had insisted on retaining most of First Capital's frontline staff, providing them with extensive retraining rather than replacing them. His philosophy centered on transformation rather than punishment, changing systems rather than simply changing personnel. The only notable exceptions were Glenn Atwood and Brielle, neither of whom had been offered positions in the new organization. Glenn had eventually found work at a smaller bank in another state, his career trajectory permanently altered by his role in the incident. At Liberty Union's headquarters, Marcus hosted a meeting of Black business leaders, including Zara, to discuss community investment strategies. The gathering included executives from various industries, all committed to leveraging their success for broader impact. What happened at First Capital opened many eyes, Marcus noted during the discussion. But awareness without action means nothing. The question is, how do we ensure lasting change? Zara listened as others shared ambitious proposals and programs. When it was her turn to speak, she kept her comments characteristically focused. "We've always had to be twice as good," she observed, echoing a sentiment familiar to everyone in the room. "The difference now is that we have the platforms to show others we already were." Her words resonated deeply with the group, many of whom had faced similar challenges throughout their careers. One woman, the CEO of a healthcare technology company, nodded in agreement. "You showed them without telling them," she said. "That's always been our way, hasn't it? But now we're being seen while we do it." As the meeting concluded, Zara walked through her childhood neighborhood on her way back to the office. Most passers-by didn't recognize her. She was still, to many, just another well-dressed Black woman going about her day. But occasionally, someone would do a double-take, their expression shifting from casual indifference to respectful recognition. In those moments, Zara understood that her legacy would extend far beyond balance sheets and business deals. She had shown what was possible when dignity remained non-negotiable, when power was exercised with precision rather than showmanship. And that, perhaps, was the most profound consequence of what had begun as a simple errand at a local bank. 1 year after the incident at First Capital Bank, Zara Caldwell received notification that she had been selected to receive the National Business Leadership Award, one of the most prestigious recognitions in American corporate life. The ceremony would be held in Washington, D.C., with coverage by major media outlets. The award committee's statement cited her transformative approach to corporate responsibility and commitment to creating pathways for underrepresented talent, carefully worded praise that acknowledged her impact without directly referencing the controversy that had amplified her platform. When the invitation arrived, Zara studied it thoughtfully before reaching for her phone. "Rosa," she said when her call was answered, "I'd like you to attend the National Business Leadership Award ceremony in Washington next month." "Of course," Rosa replied. "Should I coordinate with your travel team?" "Not as part of my team," Zara clarified. "As my representative. I'd like you to accept the award on my behalf." There was a moment of stunned silence before Rosa found her voice again. "Me? But this is one of the biggest honors in business. You should be there." "The honor belongs to those who stood up when they could have remained silent," Zara said simply. "She stood up when I chose not to." 2 weeks before the ceremony, Congress introduced a new banking regulation bill that included a provision quickly nicknamed Zara's Clause. The measure required racial bias training and independent oversight in all banking institutions that handled large private client accounts. The provision had gained support from lawmakers across the political spectrum, each for their own reasons. Some motivated by justice, others by the practical desire to avoid costly scandals and boycotts. Regardless of motivation, the effect would be concrete. Explicit protections against the kind of discrimination Zara had experienced, backed by federal enforcement mechanisms and substantial penalties for non-compliance. On the morning of the award ceremony, Zara drove past the original First Capital Bank branch, now a Liberty Union credit union location. The building stood empty, its windows papered over, awaiting renovation. She didn't slow down or turn her head. The place held no power over her anymore, existing now as merely another building in her city's landscape. Later that day, as Rosa Martinez accepted the National Business Leadership Award on her behalf, Zara was meeting with 16-year-old Ava Williams, the girl who had written to her 5 years earlier. Now a poised young woman with clear ambition, Ava had been invited to appear on a local talk show highlighting young entrepreneurs. "I started my tutoring network because of you," Ava explained as they prepared for the segment. "You showed me that age doesn't determine impact." The tutoring network, which paired high-achieving teens with younger students in underserved schools, had grown from Ava's personal project into a citywide initiative with over 200 volunteers. "You call me your spark," Zara said with a smile, "but you built the fire yourself." The years had brought many such moments, quiet encounters with people whose lives had been touched, directly or indirectly, by the ripple effects of that day at the bank. Some, like Ava, had found inspiration. Others, like the employees at Liberty
Union, had found new opportunities in the aftermath of institutional failure. A montage of transformations had played out across many lives.
Rosa had graduated with her MBA and been promoted to senior analyst at Caldwell Innovations. Dev had recovered from his treatment and returned as Zara's chief of staff, his condition manageable with ongoing care. The Althea Caldwell Institute had expanded internationally, with programs in 3 countries and over 200 graduates making their mark in various industries. And Brielle? After 2 years in retail obscurity, she had found an unexpected path to redemption. With her mother's guidance, she had enrolled in a social work program, eventually securing an internship with a community organization that helped women transition from incarceration back into society. The irony wasn't lost on Brielle. She was now helping others rebuild lives that had been derailed by poor choices, just as she had been forced to rebuild her own. The work was demanding and often thankless, but it provided something her banking career never had, a sense of genuine purpose. Meanwhile, Peter Langdon had channeled his experience into a best-selling book on ethical leadership titled The Weight of Silence. The book, which dedicated a chapter to Zara's handling of the bank incident, had become required reading in many MBA programs. The most profound lesson I learned from Zara Caldwell, Peter wrote in the dedication, is that true leadership isn't measured by how loudly you speak, but by how clearly your actions communicate your values. This book is dedicated to the woman who let grace do the talking. One rainy afternoon, Dev discovered an old digital archive while reorganizing Zara's personal files. Among the folders was a video labeled simply, Mom, 1992. When Zara played it, her mother's voice filled the room, younger than in her memories but with the same quiet authority that had shaped Zara's own leadership style. We fight with dignity, or we don't fight at all, Althea Caldwell was saying to someone off camera. That doesn't mean we don't fight hard. It means we never forget who we are in the process. Zara watched the clip several times, struck by how her mother's words seemed to have predicted the approach she would take decades later when faced with her own battle. As summer turned to fall, Zara began taking regular walks with Rosa and Matteo, now 8 years old and endlessly curious about the world. Though never formally acknowledged, they had become something of an unofficial family, bound by shared values and mutual respect. During one such walk through a riverside park, Matteo asked a question that caught Zara by surprise. "Why didn't you yell at those mean people at the bank? My friends at school say you should always stand up to bullies." Zara considered how to explain complex concepts of strategic restraint and calculated response to a child. After a moment, she knelt to meet his eyes. "The world doesn't change when you shout," she told him gently. "It changes when you lead." Standing up doesn't always mean raising your voice. Sometimes it means showing others a better way forward. Matteo nodded solemnly, processing her words with the earnestness only children can bring to philosophical discussions. 2 weeks later, Zara received an unexpected call from the White House. The president was assembling a commission on financial reform and wanted her to consider a cabinet-level position overseeing implementation of new banking regulations. The offer was tempting, a platform to influence policy at the highest level, to codify the changes she believed were necessary. But as she considered it, Zara recognized that this particular battlefield wasn't where her strengths would be best utilized. "I'm honored by the consideration," she told the presidential advisor, "but that's not my battlefield. I'll be happy to train the ones who will fight there." Instead, Zara focused her energy on expanding the Althea Caldwell Institute's reach. A new headquarters was under construction, a modern glass building designed by a black female architect who had been among the Institute's first fellows. On the day of the groundbreaking ceremony, hundreds gathered to witness the beginning of the Institute's next chapter. Among them were faces from every part of Zara's journey: Rosa and Matteo, Dev and his partner, Peter Langdon, the Harris family, Ava Williams, and dozens of graduates whose careers had been transformed by the opportunities the Institute provided. As Zara approached the podium to make her remarks, she paused, taking in the sea of faces before her. Each person represented a ripple effect from what had begun as a moment of humiliation, now transformed into a movement of empowerment. She stepped up to the microphone, her mother's pendant, "Dignity always," catching the sunlight as she began to speak. The doors to the future she had built opened before her, welcoming a new generation of leaders who would carry forward what she had begun. No spotlight sought her out. No dramatic music announced her importance. Just a woman who had transformed silence into strength, humiliation into hope, and a single moment of disrespect into a lasting legacy of dignity. Zara Caldwell walked through those doors with purpose, in her stride and peace in her heart, ready for whatever challenges awaited on the other side. Have you ever wondered what true power looks like when it doesn't need to announce itself? If this story of quiet dignity and calculated consequence moved you, please like, subscribe, and share for more stories that challenge how we see the world around us.